everybody, and welcome back to Feedback Loop. I'm Joey,
and I'm Jeremy,
and this is 2021, man.
Yeah, boys.
I mean, I guess for you people listening, you already listened to an episode in 2021. This is our first episode that we're recording in 2021,
and it's the first album of 2021.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. And the album is an album that we didn't originally say in the episode last week. It is
because we're horrible at our jobs.
Hey, it was a weird week last week.
It was.
So the album is called Long Season, and it is by a band called Fishmans. And they're like...
I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no.
But to clarify, this is an album that is also just a song.
That is very true, yes.
So it's kind of weird and not typical for us, not typical for anyone, I would imagine. But so yeah, the album is Fishman's Long Season, but the album is just a song called Long Season.
Yeah.
Which is an extension, I guess, of one of their other songs.
Yeah.
Called Season.
Yeah. I haven't looked too much into the history of it because this was the first song/album I heard from this band. And I've been meaning to get more into them. Like, I've listened to some of their other stuff, but I haven't done any sort of deep dives. But, this was...
So how did you find Fishmans?
Well...
Fishmans?
Fishmans? I don't know. Like, I kind of just found them... I was looking around online, and I do the complete and total fucking normie thing sometimes, and just, like... look on like Rate Your Music and like just lists that music critics have put out, or like different other musicians who are or music critics on like YouTube or something who have shows like that. And I was actually on Rate Your Music, and the live album for Fishmans, where I can't remember the name of it, but it was their last show ever that they recorded, because their singer and guitar player actually passed away a little bit after it before they could record anything else. So their last live show ever was recorded, and it is apparently the highest rated live album on all of rateyourmusic.com. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's got like 7,000 reviews or something, and they're like all positive.
So how'd you get from that to this album?
Because on that live album, apparently it was the first time they ever played Long Season in full.
Oh.
So I heard that, and then I was like, you know what? I'll check out the album version. And it's like...
I feel like the live one would be cooler.
The live one is... I think it's cooler, but I couldn't I couldn't really be like,
justify
okay,
it.
Yeah, we're gonna listen to this whole live album, because it's like I think it's like 2.5, 3 hours long.
Oh, yeah,
and I didn't want to...
That makes sense.
It's only on the second half because it's like a 2-disc thing, I guess.
Gotcha.
So I was like, I don't know if we can really do that.
Yeah, we can split it up.
Yeah,
it's our show. We can do whatever we want, Joey.
That's very true. Sometimes I feel so constrained by society.
by people's attention spans. Look, if someone's going to sit and listen to us for an hour, surely they won't mind listening to us for 2 hours.
I hope
they
not.
can chunk it up themselves,
Well, I mean, we did have that Neutral Milk Hotel episode that was 2 hours long. So
was it that long?
It was 2 hours
so
long.
Ago.
And the Nana Grizzle album, or
that
episode,
was long,
it was like an hour and 40 minutes. So.
Well, this one's starting out to be just as long if we keep talking about this.
Okay, album art. Boom, boom. It's the three guys from Fishmans. They're walking on like a nature pathway. And it's just them. Like, they're just...
Yeah, it's a photograph.
It's just a photograph of them just walking along through what looks like a trail. I'm guessing somewhere in Japan where they live.
Presumably.
And, they're just walking along, and it looks like a nice place to be. Like, I want to be there. It looks cool.
They got fishing poles.
They're
Fishmans.
They're Fishmans, and then it's got like their little logo, which is like a hook with a fish, and it says Fishmans, and then underneath it says, "We are not one season," I believe, or "We are not the four seasons."
We are not 4 seasons.
We're not 4 seasons
because the album is Long Season.
Yeah, it's one long season instead of 4 seasons. One long song instead of...
Which I'll complain about at the end.
Oh shit!
At the end of the episode. But something before we get into it, I haven't thought about it until you started talking about their live album and the dude dying and stuff, and I looked briefly to see what year this album released, and I
Mhm.
didn't realize this was so old. This came out in '96,
Yeah, dude.
which I guess it's still newer than it sounds, but older than I was expecting it. I
Yeah.
guess because I don't know. There's some pretty cool rad shit that I would not have expected
That's what
on
I'm
this album.
saying. Like these guys, and you know what? We'll get into it more, but these guys apparently were ahead of their time. Which,
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah. But
I agree wholeheartedly.
so we usually do like a starting off track
I was
thing.
wondering what we're gonna do here.
I'm just gonna kind of like lay it out all out on the table. We didn't think this entirely. I didn't think this entirely through. So this album is just one long song.
Right.
Normally we're like segue into the song. This
Yeah,
is
we can punctuate our notes and we
Yeah.
can punctuate our thoughts by tracks.
So we kind of, I didn't think to be like, hey, so how are we going to do this beforehand? So we broke the song up into parts because originally it was broken into 5 parts, but currently it is not. In no current iteration or release is it broken up into parts.
Yeah, we're just gonna kind of ramble, I guess.
Yeah. So which I mean I'm okay with because this album's kind of rambly. So
Yeah, so we're gonna start so strong. The first actual album episode of 2021 is just gonna be us trying to organize our thoughts in synchronicity with each other while
Yeah.
we have no bearing. But it's fine.
Yeah.
So the song starts off.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and kind of describe what's going on. I guess we don't have to do that. We don't have to start at any one point. I guess because this is one song. The whole song is pretty groovy, right?
Yeah. Like
It's got a groovy bass line through the main section, I will call it, because the first section comes back at the end.
Yeah.
But the first section, at least according to my notes, has this groovy bass line. It's got some piano, and it's got a string instrument that I'm assuming is a guitar with some weird effects, but it could be a different kind of string plucked instrument thing for the main melody. I don't know. It lays a nice foundation for what is to come.
Yeah, that guitar, I think that's a guitar. Like I haven't officially looked it up, but I mean the main 3 guys, they're like guitar, bass, and drums. I mean, obviously they play a lot of other instruments and they bring in a lot of other instruments. But so like it starts off with kind of a watery sound, and that super groovy bass line starts immediately, but it's kind of quiet, and then like keys come in, and then there's like this, I think it's a shamisen or something. It's like there's a lot of stringed instruments that they play with like a really big pick that sound very plucky.
Right.
And it sounds to be one of those. I should have done more research, but I just listen to music.
Shame on you.
But yeah, that guitar is what sold me. That opening guitar, that fucking, it's such a biting tone. Yeah, like it just tears. It's so good. The very first.
Sorry for headphone users.
No, they can turn it down maybe, but
I mean it's too late if it happened. I'll turn it down.
Yeah, no, it's just so, it cuts to my soul.
Yeah,
and it's just like so intense, so biting, so tearing, and that's just kind of the melody throughout the first, like I don't know, 10 minutes really. And he comes in. It comes in with this kind of descending piano line that is a central theme really throughout most of the song. Like it's kind of a spacey, like you're floating type deal where it just sounds very dreamy, which I mean is part of their sound and a sound that I like a whole lot. But yeah, it's just super cool. I think it's very trance-like, but not in like a house music way or like an electronic music way. Like it's
just like an ambient kind of deal going on with this whole album. Really, there's a lot of ambient noise and stuff that gets sprinkled in, even in this very musical section.
Mm-hmm.
I say that intentionally because there are some sections that are less musical, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's a lot of ambience. There's a lot of suspense building, but it kind of has the main, once it kicks into the main section, which is like 2.5 minutes in. Again, just because we didn't clarify, I guess I shouldn't have said again. The song's like 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
And so when he says the first 10 minutes of it are that's a third of the album.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of that is just kind of the groovy bass line. It's got the guitar, it's got the piano, like everything that we've mentioned, and it hangs around for like 10 minutes. which is pretty long for a song to begin with,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like it's a bad thing. It doesn't feel like it's too long. It's just because it's got a nice groove. It's like people just kind of grooving together, like they're kind of like a jam band kind of deal going on, where they're just like experimenting with things, but it's also very like very clearly thought out and
Yeah.
very very produced. Even though it feels kind of, it's very structured, I guess is what I would say,
Yeah.
despite it kind of feeling jam bandy to me.
Yeah, I definitely get the jam band. Like it gives me that feel, I guess. Not that
Yeah,
I listen to a lot of jam bands. Like that's one kind of genre, like Fish
yeah.
type deals. That's something that I've never really like got into, but maybe this is my
Well,
gateway to
yeah.
that.
So you start with the Fishmans, and then you go on to Fish.
Maybe that's
You
where
become a
Fish got
fish
their
man.
name.
Yeah.
I don't know which band came first, but
The chicken or the egg.
yeah.
But yeah, so they have a lot of instruments, like you mentioned. The vocals come in at like 4.5 minutes.
Hmm.
It's a Japanese singer, and I don't know if it's one of them or if it's a female vocalist. I'm horrible about that, but there's like a higher pitched, kind of feminine sounding, in my opinion, vocalist that comes in.
He is a
I didn't
guy.
I didn't look up the lyrics.
He is their sole vocalist.
Okay,
Shinji.
wait, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's one dude.
Interesting.
Shinji Sato. Like I'm sorry, there's for his
Probably
name.
Sato. Sato
Yeah,
sounds right. But is
Sa-
that racist for me to say that I think it sounds like that way?
I think it probably sounds right. I just said Sato because I'm fucking panicking because I don't
Yeah.
know how to pronounce. I literally speak zero Japanese.
Well, we learned a little bit with Poppy last year.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true.
We learned how to say I disagree with you.
Yeah, but other than learning how to say I disagree with you and like the basics, the absolute basics of like
Right. We should have learned some with fucking Porter Robinson too, but I don't remember any of that. Anyways, you got some vocals,
Yeah,
and I didn't look up the lyrics at all because, as I've said many times, usually I don't know if I've actually said it on the podcast, but
we've talked about it.
especially with foreign music. Yeah, I guess we would have had to at some point. With foreign music specifically, I try not to figure out what they're saying in for whatever weird reason. It sounds better just because the rhythm of the language is like it's enough for me to make it stand out. It's enough to make it unique, and it makes the music kind of rely on the emotion being conveyed by the singer without having words, without having language. So in a way, it's kind of like they're scatting, I guess, but more melodically, I suppose. And it's just how I enjoy music. So I specifically didn't look into lyrics, but I believe you looked into them recently.
I did for this. I've
Right.
listened to this album a lot. Like this, I don't know if I said it in our yearly recap thing, but this kind of was my palate cleanser. Like if
Yeah.
I ever got too overwhelmed, like when listening to new music, or I say overwhelmed, like it's, but I don't know. Just sometimes when you're like listening to like 3 or 4 brand new albums all in a row,
Yeah. You
and
want to
like,
listen to something familiar to ground yourself.
yeah, this is what I would listen to, and I never knew the lyrics. I just listened to him because I just his voice is nice, the way he sings, it's rhythmic and everything. So, uh, yeah,
But you did look up the lyrics.
I did.
What's he
Oh,
singing
yeah,
about?
yeah, I did. I looked up the lyrics, and it's luckily I was not disappointed. I'll say that. Like
Okay.
the lyrics seem very. I don't know if this is the right word, but ethereal. Just
Sure.
due to the fact that he's singing like the opening lyrics, he starts off just saying the word quiet, and then in the first maybe 10 minutes in that first part is really where the bulk of the lyrics are.
Yeah.
He says, "At dusk we drove, calling the wind and calling you. We ran from one end of Tokyo to the other, halfway dreaming." So immediately he's talking about, what I can gather, finding someone who's like a lover, a very good friend, like they're meeting up and they're getting out of the city. And
Sure.
he ends
You're
it with,
going on an adventure.
yeah, he ends it like halfway dreaming. Like, I don't know. It makes me think like, is this a dream? Like, are we really doing this? Kind of like you're caught up in the moment. You're
Right.
not paying attention, and immediately follows it up with watching the sunset in the rearview mirror, feeling kind of happy, feeling kind of lonely. Seems like I've been done in by my cold medicine, and like that, I'm driving, and that
Interesting.
it gave me a feel of. Have you ever seen the Graduate?
I've not.
Okay, so I guess spoiler alert for
What year did this movie come out?
in like the 70s.
Okay, you don't need a spoiler tag. It's fine.
But so it's about like a guy who loves a girl and they get together and then they break up because he's a fucking dickbag, and and then she goes off and is going to marry some other guy. He comes and it's the like the beginning of that. Does anybody object? Speak now or forever hold your peace. And then somebody like
Right.
fucking yells and it's like, I object. And
Sure.
he was like the first one to do that. And so they break up the marriage and run away. And the ending shot is just them sitting in the back of the bus, her in her wedding gown, him in just like street clothes. And they just kind of like look at each other. They're smiling as they're looking back at this bus pulling out of the church parking lot. And then they kind of lose their smile and they wonder, like, you can see they start to wonder, like, oh shit, what now? Like, the reality
Right.
sets in. And then Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence starts playing. And it's just like, oh shit. Like, the reality of what would actually happen in that situation hits you.
Right.
And that's kind of the vibe I get from this. Just the words, watching the sunset in the rearview mirror, feeling kind of happy, feeling kind of lonely. It makes me think of, like, the reality of running away from the city hits them as they're leaving.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned something about him feeling like the cough syrup had hit him
Yeah.
or whatever. So that's kind of an interesting point in that I got some of those feels without knowing the lyrics, which
Yeah.
is something that I think is great about music and the fact that I was able to kind of pull off on that. But I think I'd talk about this a little bit later, just with like the overall feeling of the way that this song is split up. It feels like there are very specific points where you're waking up from a dream,
Mm-hmm.
or you're like having this kind of weird split of reality kind of a deal, which I think that it speaks to music and exploration, which I guess I'll go ahead and say, like, I feel like a lot of this album could be a long metaphor for exploring music and creativity and just kind of going on this journey via music and seeing what happens. And sometimes it'll like transport you. So like this first section, for example, is them hanging out, having fun, playing music together, like kind of like the jam band situation that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But then it abruptly changes, like 13-ish minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
I guess not abruptly. That's too harsh of a word for at least that transition. But it changes sections, and you feel like maybe you're going somewhere. Maybe you're like lost in thought. Maybe you're elsewhere, and it just like it feels like you're being transported. Whether that's from just giving into the music, which is where my sober mind goes, or giving into to getting high,
Yeah.
by some other like drug related means, just being somewhere else than you really are in reality, drifting off to that place, and then at some point it snaps you back into that kind of reality at the end of the track.
Yeah, I got similar feels to that because I don't think maybe abrupt is too harsh of a word, but the transition at around 14 minutes it's pretty sobering, I'd say, because
Yeah.
it's like kind of this dreamy, spacey. You're floating with the kind of groovy bass line, the twinkling piano keys, and the like cutting guitar. And
Yeah, and they have like as it transitions there, not to cut you off, it gets very echoey.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of like there's like a section around 11 minutes, I think, where the singer is kind of like scatting,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of not really saying anything and just playing with a lot of echo effects, and just kind of seeing how that feels before like the drums kind of come back in.
Yeah.
And continue this movement, the transition to the new section.
Yeah, he definitely does some kind of vocal stylings that remind me of like The Great Gig in the Sky. I don't know if have you ever heard?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's very much just like he's like,
right.
I mean,
yeah, I was having Robert Plant feels, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's obviously way better than whatever the fuck I just did. But I mean, it's kind of just that all over the place, like he's
just freestyling.
Yeah, and then so his voice is like super high and airy, and then it just cuts out, and there's like kind of this wet dripping sound,
Hmm.
and there's like bells and wind chimes, and just there's no other music going on at this point either. Like all of the other music kind of backs out, and then the drums come in, and it's like these banging, just like almost tribal drums, I guess, but it only sounds tribal, I guess, in the sense that it's pretty tom heavy, and it's
Yeah,
like like
I
just
got very like I got like parade vibes.
okay, yeah, I could definitely see that, and it kind of goes into the background at one point and gets really like washed out,
Yeah,
or it's like they crushed the sound down, and it's just very much in the background, and there's just like wind chimes blowing, there's
dude, those
whistling,
fucking those chimes, they are like they come out of nowhere
yeah,
for one, and they swell up really fast, and it's kind of dissonant, and it's like overwhelming, and for whatever reason, it makes me super anxious.
yeah.
Just the way that the chimes come in, and they exist, and they're loud, and they're in your face, and then they're gone.
Yep, they're just like they came. They're just fucking gone.
Yeah, and it
This is
fucking something about it is just like the chaos of it just puts me on edge.
It definitely is, and I think you described it like perfectly with the waking up, because I had talked about this song. It puts you in a trance almost, like with kind of the easiness of the opening part, and
Right.
it just goes on for so long. Like we're talking 14 minutes into the song, into the album, is whenever this
Right.
stuff, like the break starts happening. So up until that point, it's easy going. You probably, your eyes are closed by this point, and you're just lost in it. Maybe you just forgot that you existed in reality, and then all of a sudden it cuts out, and these drums come in. These ambient sounds that aren't even really like musical come
Yeah,
in.
it's just chaos.
Yeah, and then this just goes on for like 6 minutes, where it's just like, and those chimes are the exact point where I am always like, I don't know if I can handle this. Like,
Yeah,
what's happening?
I put in my notes. Oh God, what's happening? It's just like it comes out of nowhere. It's chaos, and then it's gone.
Yeah,
And like I said, it does end up mixing some of the drums and stuff down, and there's like the singing bowl kind of deal
yeah,
for like a synth kind of thing that takes the forefront, and the whole like soundscape that is painted in my mind during that section it reminds me of like watching Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
mm,
and there's a scene where Willy Wonka's showing them the room where all of his new candies are made or whatever, and there's kind of this industrial vibe to it, and that there's like all these machines making weird noises as they're churning out candy like the Gobstopper and stuff, and for whatever reason that's where my mind went,
yeah,
is that it was just like it, even after it tuned down the drums and stuff, and I'm not saying it sounds industrial, I guess, but there's just a lot of like weird noise going on, and a lot of like I don't know, just weirdness in general that reminds me of that scene in the movie.
yeah. I mean, I definitely get that, a vibe at least similar, not industrial, but it is like it's not. There's a lot of sounds in there that are not instruments,
Right.
so it's definitely like just a weird kind of foray into some sort of like ambient music, or I guess ambient's the wrong word too, because ambient to me at least implies background, not, you don't have to think about it. And if this got put
Right.
on in the background, I'd be like sweating. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's very strange music.
yeah, yeah, there we
If
go. It's
if music is still being used at this point.
yeah, but it's just, I feel like I treat it as a break, I guess,
Yeah, it's
because
definitely like maybe a psychotic break, but it's a break.
yeah, well, and it's so the whole first half or whatever of this song is really a lot of the same thing. It's like the same melodic pattern. It's just very similar.
Right.
I mean, when
That piano pattern is in like 90% of the song.
yeah, it really is. And I mean, the whole album is just one song, so like makes sense if you're looking at it from a song perspective. But I feel like whenever at the beginning, whenever you say like, "Oh yeah, this whole album is just one long song," people are probably
Right.
thinking, "Oh, it's still probably got breaks like a song." It's like,
Yeah,
no, it
no.
kind of keeps to a normal song structure, and like it's 14 minutes of a very cool song, but it's
Right.
like after 14 minutes, this is, I feel, a refreshing palate cleanser. It's like taking a bite of like something really spicy, and
Yeah.
punchy.
Or sour.
Yeah, or sour. Yeah, just like something that will just wake you the fuck up
Just
during.
bite into a lemon.
Yeah, yeah, like you're eating a bunch of noodles or something,
Yeah.
and you're just like, man, this is getting to be too much. And then somebody shoves a lemon into your eyeball, and you're like, fuck, okay.
Shove a lemon into your eyeball.
I guess I can do another 18 minutes of this. And
But yeah, it's definitely like a transition thing. Like
yeah,
it sticks around for a while. Like I guess not nearly as long as the first section,
yeah. I mean, it's like
but
6 minutes.
yeah, it's the length of a song or
Yeah,
two, depending. So it's definitely giving the album some breathing room, I
yeah,
think, for what is to come. And then like after that drum section ends, everything just stops
yeah. It's just
briefly.
gone.
Yeah, just everything, like the drums build back up after they were crushed down, and then it stops, and then it leads on to the next section,
Yeah,
which I have called the ba ba ba
yep.
section, which is like 20 minutes, 20 and a half minutes
Yeah, it's around
into
there.
the song. It has some there, like after it stops, it comes in with some like Morse code sounding beeps. It's got this super lo-fi guitar giving like a chord progression,
Yeah.
and it has some like weird like reverse sound samples, which
Hmm.
are always fun. And then you hear the singer singing this melody of Boz. I'm not gonna replicate it and make a fool of myself on the internet like someone,
Oh
but you
shit.
know. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like at this point was when I was like, maybe the watery kind of cave section was some sort of a nightmare. And at this point, I've woken up, or maybe it's the opposite, and that the watery cave, which I've labeled that kind of like watery section before all the drums and shit come in,
Yeah.
um, maybe that section introduced some sort of altercation or some sort of fight. And in that fight, I was knocked unconscious, and that's when the song cut out. And now I'm dreaming because I'm unconscious, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I have always felt kind of that way simply because of my experience with the song, which I'm guessing was pretty similar to yours. Just like with the opening sounding so dreamy and everything, and then that sounding so much like reality, and then it going like
Right.
that is where you're having a nightmare, and that's what wakes you up. But then after reading it, I'm wondering if them leaving the city and them going on out on their own, leaving maybe the comfort of the city or something to go have this new life, that's the dream, and then the reality that sets in is the craziness of the drum watery part. And then they, because the lyrics come back and they're the same lyrics in this part as the stuff starts to come back.
Right.
So I don't know.
So
It's just
I feel like I'm strongly taking, the more you talk about it, the more I'm taking the opposite stance, in that I feel like maybe the dreamy kind of groovy sections are them existing consciously when they're out in the countryside, just
mhm.
enjoying the countryside, and then when they go to sleep, they're having nightmares of where they came from, or they're still thinking about the city in the back of their mind unconsciously. Like when they go to sleep, they're having all these kind of thoughts of the chaos in the city. And again, it's not industrial,
Yeah.
but it's very like cluttered and chaotic kind of a deal.
You
And
know,
then after that section ends, they wake back up and they're still in this countryside kind of deal.
I definitely like that take. I like. I want to subscribe. I want to unsubscribe from what I said and subscribe to that because I like that.
Why
I
don't you
like that.
subscribe to Feedback Loop Podcast on
Woo!
YouTube and Facebooks and Twitters
And
and
SoundCloud. Can you
SoundCloud?
subscribe on SoundCloud? Is that a
Yeah, I
thing?
think so. I think you can follow us,
Yeah, do
like
that.
us, something. Do that.
Hit the bell. I don't. That's something I hear
Click,
people
yeah,
say.
click the bell. I don't know if that exists anywhere outside of YouTube, and we
Like,
don't have a YouTube following because we don't do video. But
hey, we need to start getting.
anyways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'll
So
stop.
after that kind of chaos section, he comes in. The guy's singing some bars. It's very like dreamy. I mean, I don't want to keep using that word, but yeah, it's very dreamy. There's like a bird whistling
Hmm.
that sounds like, and it sounds like some cars passing on the highway, and then the whistling becomes a melody, so it's obvious it's not necessarily supposed to represent a bird, but
Hmm.
it kind of like, it made me feel like I'm sitting in a grass lot or at like a park somewhere that's close to a highway, and you can just hear cars passing in the distance, but you can still hear like birds singing, and you're just kind of like having a nice picnic somewhere.
That does sound nice. I would listen to this song on a picnic, at least the dreamier parts of the song on a picnic. Maybe I wouldn't break that out when I'm like breaking out the PB&J or something and
Right.
having a nice
Especially
day.
because that this section where he's just kind of like riffing on the bars, he's going ba 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 ba. There's this high piercing violin that comes,
Hmm.
and it breaks everything apart.
Yep.
So there's like in my mind there was this perspective of someone sitting at a park having a picnic or whatever with his loved one or something. They're just enjoying nature. They're just being out there having fun, being happy. And then everything starts to crumble and fall apart. Like chunks of the earth are floating off into the void, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?" And it's kind of giving that kind of nightmare kind of sequence back to it. It like I hate the violin. It pierces my eardrums and it hurts, and I just it's insane, and it just feels like chaos and like what the fuck is happening, and like why is this good thing going bad, kind of a deal.
Man, I feel like I don't know from your perspective, but I feel like I keep saying a lot of negative sounding things, but I really like this album. So
Yeah, no, I don't think you're being negative.
okay, because
Even when I'm talking about how much I hate the violin sound, I like that they used it. I like that it happened. I just
yeah,
hate the sound because it's painful in some ways. It's very shrill and high, but I think that's the point. Is they wanted to like kind of drill it a bit and kind of separate that section, snap you out of the dream section, kind of a deal.
definitely that's the distinction I was about to make. I feel like they're I don't know. This is a band, like you said, they like to do musical exploration. I mean,
Right.
they everything they're putting in there is for a reason. It's to evoke a feeling, and whether it's a positive or negative feeling, they're doing it for a reason. And I
Yeah.
like the atmosphere they create with the album. But yeah, it is very grating, I guess.
Yeah,
it
for
just
sure.
it just comes in like I don't know, and that's what I broke down in my notes this into 5 sections, and that screeching violin brings in the 5th section, which is the
Yeah,
last
same.
10 minutes of the album song. But
Yep.
yeah,
And in that section, it kind of reverts back to the first section
hmm
a lot, where they're just kind of like they're grooving, they're having fun. They're just kind of they're playing a song again. They're not necessarily taking you on a journey or continuing the journey, but I
yeah,
guess they're concluding the journey with flashbacks of where they started, kind of a deal. But they build on it a little bit. There's the sick ass guitar solo that comes in
oh yeah, dude,
that I like, and the song just kind of like it rides out, it resolves itself. It's a very nice ending.
yeah. I like it. It comes full circle because I mean, the last section, this last part is 10 minutes. The opening section that this is pretty much just another riff of
Right.
is like 14 minutes long. So I I don't want this to sound boring to anybody. I don't I keep saying like, oh yeah, it's
It's
14,
just 24 minutes of the same thing.
but it's in a good way, and they
Yeah,
do
it feels good
they add to it enough, I think, to keep it fresh.
for sure.
Uh,
Yeah, the whole thing. It's not like it all comes in at the beginning and then nothing changes for 14 minutes.
yeah,
It's constantly being like built upon
yeah,
or tweaked. Some things are taken away, some things are added, some things are tweaked and changed to give a different effect, and it's great. I think experimentation is a very good word to describe what they're doing, but it's also kind of a bad word because I think there's, at least in my mind, when I think of experimental music, I think of those kind of middle sections of the song
yeah,
where it's just kind of chaos, where they're throwing rules of music out the window. But that's not what this is doing,
yeah,
at least in most of the album. It's very much still making I don't want to call it pop, but it's very much making music in a traditional sense.
yeah. I think at least portions of this could definitely be classified as some form of pop. I mean, if you look,
Right.
these guys, I think they're technically like classified as dream pop is what
Okay.
like
Yeah. Sure.
their genre is. But I like I don't know, I do think of experimental music as more of the middle part, and I think a whole lot of people do. But I like the way that they approach it, because I feel like if you just throw somebody into the middle part, the drum part of this, where it's like a lot of not music and just sounds, if you just
Right.
launch people into that, most people aren't going to respond that well to it. And
Yeah.
that's not, you want these guys, they give a good context, I feel, and that's what I think they're really good at. They can throw stuff in there like that and have set up an album with enough context that you're like, okay, I get this journey, I get what's happening, and you get thrown into it, and you're like, oh my god, this is so different. Like, what's happening? What's going on? And then
Yeah.
they kind of come back in. It's like, no, okay, it's
It's
okay
okay.
now. It's okay now.
Everything's okay.
But I feel like that is how experimental music should be presented, at least
I don't know,
for an
man.
intro.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that kind of goes against the point of it, though. Like, maybe not the point. I don't want to say that the point of experimental music is to exclude people.
Yeah,
Like, I know we've mentioned black metal.
yeah,
Like, the whole intention was exclusion, but I kind of get a similar vibe with, like, it's not supposed to cater to people. It's not supposed to be tailored to what people enjoy listening to necessarily. It's to kind of throw that aside, kind of like what I was saying, and try something new, something that goes
yeah,
against the grain, or potentially upsets people, or at least doesn't please people, because that's how you kind of find what works and what doesn't work. And if you can elicit that kind of emotion, whether, like, kind of like we said, positive or negative, if you can elicit that emotion and you can do it well, then I think that means you're making good music, even if I don't like the music you're making, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Oh, I can see that. Like, that's definitely a very good point. And I am, I guess, coming at this from the perspective of somebody who's listened to this album a lot, who's listened to a
Yeah,
lot of, I guess you could say, experimental music,
sure.
and
Far
have,
more than me.
like, so I guess it is a different background. I'm just thinking, I want I want the world to get to a point where it's like I could play this for anybody,
Right.
and they're going to be like, they're not going to bat an eye, or at least they're going to bat the right eyes at this, and it will become kind of ingrained in
Hmm.
the grander music, and then it will be more accepted, and then the boundaries will get pushed even further. I just want
Yeah,
more and more.
that's where I'm stuck on, is that, say this music, say this song, this album, whatever, becomes mainstream,
Mm,
right? It becomes popular to have music arranged in this way. Then what comes next as far as experimentation? Is there a
exactly.
next? At some point, there's not a next, right?
There's always a next. There's always been a next since the dawn of time, I feel like.
Yeah, but
Like,
I don't know. I feel like at some point, as a species at least. Well, I mean, I guess more instruments are being created, more sounds are being discovered, I suppose, in some ways.
especially in
Maybe I'm
today's
just being
age.
pessimistic.
Like, we're in the
That's true.
age,
Digital, yeah, I guess the whole fucking digital music, like,
you can make
being able,
anything.
yeah, you can literally make every possible combination of sound frequency
Yeah.
with software on your computer, kind of a thing. There are, I guess, near infinite possibilities, but it just, I don't know. I feel like at some point it's good to have that barrier of discovering the new sound, kind of a thing.
You know, I can't disagree with you because I do like that.
Because
But
we're pretentious, so we like being snobby about music.
well, I guess maybe that is a little bit of it. Like, I
Oh,
think,
that's definitely a part of it for
yeah,
sure.
like I definitely do just like there's a part of me that likes showing people music, and
Yeah,
their first reaction is, what the fuck is this? Or like, I don't. I like to elicit the words, "That's not music," and then I can be like, "Why though?"
explain why it is. Yeah,
Yeah, and then because I feel like that makes discussion as to like, well, what do you consider music? What are your limits to what you consider music? And then once you can find that, you can kind of eke your way in there and be like,
yeah. I
okay,
mean,
well,
I talk a lot about gateway albums and gateways to sounds and to genres, and to stuff like that. So I feel like that applies in every aspect of music and even life, honestly. Like, there is potential within every person to like everything. I think
Yeah.
it's just being introduced to it in the right way at the right time with the right intentions. And there's a lot of layers to everything. Has to align perfectly to like something that you dislike or that you think you dislike. Like, it's hard to break down those barriers, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So I think, I guess it is possible that this becomes mainstream, this kind of experiment. I mean, even ambient music in general isn't super popular because
It's getting
oh,
there, kind of.
it's definitely getting bigger.
Yeah.
But to call it mainstream, like, people
Yeah.
want pop music.
Yeah.
By and large, that's what pop music is, right? That's what people want. And I don't know if there will be a day when ambient music becomes like top 40 radio.
Well, see, but by the time that happens, ambient music will be called pop music, I feel. Because, I mean, like,
Well, yeah,
the Beatles were, like, pop back. I
sure.
mean, and that's not what you would consider today's pop. I feel like everything has its cycle. And I guess I'm greedy for wanting to speed that up to be more like the music that I gravitate towards. I guess that is not shitty, but it's kind of like
Eh,
I want a lot of people to really like this music,
well,
so more of it gets made. But then I guess it gets
yeah,
watered
I don't think
down.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
I don't think. I mean, partially why we're doing this podcast, right? It's to discover things that we haven't discovered, or to listen to music that we otherwise wouldn't have discovered.
yeah,
And I think it's good to try to find those things, but it's also like, you haven't heard every song in whatever genre you like,
that
right?
is
Like,
fair. Yeah,
we listen to a lot of metal. There's no way in hell we've heard every possible genre of metal,
dude, there's so much
or
metal.
because each band, if you really want to focus the beam here, like, each song could theoretically be categorized into its own very small genre,
Yeah,
right? And that's the thing, like, labeling a band as a genre is limiting to them,
hmm,
but I obviously understand the need to do so. Like, labeling things it's infinitely useful, being able to put a word to what something means, but I feel like there are downsides to that, where it's kind of pigeonholing, I guess, an artist, or I don't know. That feels pretentious to say.
I don't think it's pretentious though, because I think it's true. Once, like, the way you view something mentally can so much influence creativity, for sure. Like, so if
Yeah,
you tell somebody, "Oh, well, your music is this," but they don't think that what if you maybe if we would have gone back in time and told all of these people, "Oh, yeah, you guys are dream pop because that's what Wikipedia says you are, and that's what
right.
we've," but they're over there thinking they're like some sort of new wave jazz or something. Like, there's some
Yeah,
super fun, and then that could greatly influence where they go. Like, I feel like not putting that limitation, like you said, whenever you're looking for music, or whenever you're trying to find out what you like and maybe lump it all together, it's
right.
definitely really, really good to have labels and genres. But I guess whenever you're directly describing somebody, it can definitely be super limiting, or in some cases discouraging, if you're like,
Yeah,
that's not how I view what I'm creating.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I guess from an artist perspective, not that I'm an artist per se, but I feel like, uh, well, I don't know. I feel like there's probably a good split,
Yeah,
but I was gonna say I feel like artists will tend to ignore that kind of classification and make music that they were going to make regardless of what people are calling it.
that's true.
I want to believe that, at
Yeah.
least. I'm sure. I mean, there's a whole industry behind music production, right? And I don't mean to harp this back to Poppy that we talked about last week, we talked about last year, but, like, I mean, in her case, she was being kind of forced in a direction by a label, but I guess that's not really specific to a genre. That's not saying that the label. I mean, I guess she seems to imply, at least in her comic, that the label was having a huge control over the music she was producing, based on her image, and they said, this is what you need to do. We don't care what music you want to make, you're gonna make this kind of music because it'll sell.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, which definitely happens. I think I'm not saying that 100% happened in Poppy's case. That there's a lot that's not like that we'll never know about that shit when it comes to specific artists. But I know it happens. But at the same time, I know that there are artists that kind of are allowed the freedom and take that freedom to push away from what people think they are. Like Childish Gambino, I think Donald Glover is very great at making music that he wants to make in the moment and not feeling or maybe in spite of feeling or to break the feeling of being pigeonholed as a rapper or as whatever R&B singer. He does what he wants to do, and I don't know if that's because he feels trapped in a genre and he wants to prove to himself he's not, or if he's doing it because he just likes making the music. That's a whole psychology deal going on there that I'm not qualified to speak on. But I don't know. It's interesting to talk about.
Definitely. And I feel like we just had a discussion for another episode, but that could also be a discussion for another episode.
I mean, we got time. We ran through our notes pretty quickly. I guess we'll wrap this up quickly, at least for the discussion. Then we can maybe talk about something else if something else comes up. But overall, I like the song. I like the album. It's very much a journey, and it just like it feels like you start at home with friends, and then it dissolves into chaos, and then it rebuilds itself, and then you're back home. Like I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of movement going on.
Mm-hmm.
Back to what I said at the top of the episode, though, the album art, I didn't notice it until I was writing my notes, but it says we're not 4 seasons. But I feel like the song could be divided up into 4 sections. And so if it's a circle, right? Because seasons are a cycle that continues, right? So you got the first section and the last section. That is 1 season.
Yeah.
Right? And then you got the kind of watery cave section where there's a lot of like water sound effects and it's before like all the chaos stuff. That's a season, right? That could be like winter or whatever. And then there's the chaos. Maybe that wouldn't be winter. Maybe that section would be fall when it's getting watery. And then there's the chaos of the drums and stuff. And that is like winter or whatever. And then there's like the next section where he's singing the bars is the 4th season. And then it comes back around to the first season. So I don't know. I feel like it's weird to say that they're not 4 seasons and then have 4 distinct sections of the song, but yeah.
But when they released the album, it's had 5 sections.
Yeah, well, they're wrong. I'm sorry. You and I both classified it as 4. Well, I guess we classified it as 5 sections, but the first and the last section are very similar. So they're 1 season in my mind.
I always thought of it as a 4-part song before I looked into how they actually classified it. So I can't disagree with you there because I just think it's weird. It does seem to have 4 distinct sections to me. But
yeah. And I feel like if they wanted to say that they're not 4 seasons, then they would have had just one homogeneous sound for the entire thing instead of having it split up. But I guess that would be pretty boring to listen to.
I mean, it might be, but it might not be, depending on how they do it.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But yeah, I like it. It's very groovy. I don't know if I'll listen to this in full often. Yeah. The chaotic middle section breaks up the kind of groovy core of it, and I'm not sure that that's something that I'll want to expose myself to a whole lot. I think I'd prefer to just listen to the first section or the last section or whatever, and hear them noodling around with that would be more fun, I think, than that breakup in the middle. But I understand why they did it.
Yeah, and I honestly feel like I don't know. I haven't listened to a ton of their other stuff, but from what I have listened to, it seems not. I mean, this seems like a different sound from what I've heard, even the first sections. But they have a lot of other stuff that's at least in a similar vein or has somewhat similar feels to the first section. So
yeah, I skipped through a little bit of Season, which is the precursor to this. I skipped through a bit of it just to see how similar it was to which sections. I think the vocals are straight from Season,
Yeah.
And transferred over to this. I'm sure they re-recorded or whatever instead of just cutting and pasting. But musically, it sounded similar, but there's actually a lot of difference between season and long season, at least from the little snippets that I was skipping through.
Yeah, I wish I had more info on like album names, but a lot of them are in Japanese, the ones that I've listened to, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to. There's one where they're like looking upwards and it's blue and it looks like they're looking up at like a train,
Yeah.
a
It
train
says
sign.
Uchu Nippon Setagaya.
Yeah, there, that one.
I'll be a fool. That's fine.
That one sounds like more like the first section of this song. I think I like that's the one that I've probably spent the most time with, other than this album, and I like it. So yeah,
Well, cool. I like this album, but not enough to listen to it again. At least anytime soon or regularly, I guess I should say. It's not a bad album. I give it a number out of 10.
Boom. I also give it a number out of 10. What number?
Cool.
I don't know. You'll have to
You'll never know.
Subscribe to find out.
Yeah, hey, we'll make a Patreon, and people that pay $20 a month will get to know what our number scores are for every album.
Make it 100. That way I don't have to actually ever do it. There's probably some crazy dude out there in the future who's going to, just some random rich dude who's like, you know what, I'm going to make them fucking work for this $20. For me and for me only. Now they have to rate all their music.
Well, I'd be interested to see what we would rate the next album that we're going to be doing next week. We're going to be discussing an album. The band, the artist, is called Shawn Lee's Ping Pong Orchestra. Shawn Lee he's a musician. He has a ton of albums. He's done like soundtracks and he's done a bunch of shit. But this album was released under the name of Shawn Lee's Ping Pong Orchestra. The album is Voices and Choices. And this album by Fishmans reminded me of Voices and Choices by Shawn Lee's Ping Pong Orchestra. I'm actually not super familiar with Shawn Lee or his music or even this album a whole lot, but I have listened to this album and it was giving me very similar vibes. So that's why we're going in that direction. It just kind of hit me.
Well, hell yeah. I like vibes. So
there it is. It took us that long to say the word vibes. Jeez.
I feel like I had to have said it at some point and just didn't catch it, but
I don't know. Maybe we
probably would have.
Well, I hope everyone has a vibey new year.
Boom.
Hopefully this one will be fucking better than the last one. Maybe we'll get to record in person again.
Yeah, it's got some pretty low expectations, so surely
the bar's pretty low for sure. But until then, as we mentioned in our weird mid-review plug, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, social medias. You guys know what's up. You guys are tech-savvy individuals. If you're listening to podcasts, just search Feedback Loop Podcast. You'll find us, I promise. I don't promise. I'm not going to say that, because then if you can't find us on one platform, you're going to scream at me and call me names, and I don't know if I can handle that emotionally. So, fuck, man. Just stay in our feedback loop.
Bye.